Hope your day is going well. In my previous video, I wanted to clarify something. It's not my intention to make every single video where it sounds, largely not subjective. What was it? Judgmental. Sometimes you get going on a tangent on a given topic and it brings out certain emotions. For myself, I think that exploitation in the workplace and poor worker treatment by a society which, often doesn't acknowledge the humanity in others, right? Away from our immediate family and friend group. I think that's an issue, but I don't want to go on and on about that. I just wanted to let you know where I'm coming from and to acknowledge that I'm trying to be aware of that because I want these to be productive videos, possible openings for conversations, etc. This one is a little more general, but I'm going to try to hit my points. And essentially, it's the proposition that there are many skills and abilities we have which are well within our reach in order to help us make, if not, sorry, getting a text real quick. Okay. There we go. There are many skills which, are some of them everyday things which we kind of take for granted. And it's not to say that we forget them, but it is to say that, we might not always acknowledge the impact that they can have over us. And I think it's important to have these conversations because there's a collective thing of human mindset that has to shift with the earth to a degree. And really, I think some of that, not all, but some of that begins with people understanding how consciousness affects them, or at least hearing theories about how consciousness might affect you, right? So people can try to describe their own experiences, and then we figure out where those experiences are unified. A really good example I've talked about before is time management. Do you understand time? Do you know how time affects you? Does time control you, or do you control your use of time? Do you have a skill mastered, like a proper sleep schedule, which is essential to good health? Every study will tell you. Which in itself is a form of time management. Are you working towards a job that, does give you some flexibility? Or unfortunately, are you in a scenario where the job you currently are in, consistently dictates your schedule, and so therefore time is a little less out of your control? If you go certain places or have to do certain things, whether it's chores or other activities and whatnot, do those not so fun things affect how you feel about time, right? To where you get some negative emotions. Granted, I have heard some people say, "Hey, you should dance and sing and listen to music as you do chores." True. It is more engaging, I've found. Another skill you could look at would be, your emotions. How often does one emotion come up? Why does it come up? Is it possible that you're staring into the past and I am refusing to, learn how to quiet those echoes of past things that have happened, which have happened to me or I have pushed onto others? Control of the emotions. That one is a challenging one because, as I've mentioned in other videos, if you've suffered a certain amount of trauma and I guess just negative experience would be a quick, description. If you've suffered enough of that in life, some people argue that coming back from that is almost impossible. I, as I've said in other videos, don't want to make an objective statement about that because I think people are right to a certain degree. That said, this right here, not the hat, the mind. It's either our greatest tool or our largest obstacle. The human mind is incapable of almost an infinity of possibilities, and it's almost as expansive as the universe. And when I go to master time, I feel like a little bit more of a sense of control. When I go to understand why my emotions come up for certain, again, I don't like this word because it's the way it's been used, but I guess it does satisfy for the moment. When certain triggers evoke some emotions in us, have we worked on breath control? Have we worked on past versus present control? Right? A person had a bad experience once on a plane, is afraid of flying, does it for the first time in years, and again, there's turbulence on the second flight because there's turbulence on planes, right? It's not to say that that's always a factor. Sometimes new factors, new situations can again have a certain amount of things you're familiar with and other things that, might cause a little bit of fear. But that would be a third one is can you master the majority potentially of your fears? The fear of failure some people have made the argument that you are in a position of privilege if your failure will not be detrimental to your existence. I think that might have a little bit of validity, but I also when I'm trying to get down to the fundamental portion of a topic, like the very, very, the smallest details. Looking at failure you can either be destroyed by it on one end, or on the other end, it can be used as a drive and motivator. And knowing that and having that internal debate is very helpful because here's one example, okay, a tangible thing. Not always. There might be a few times where it is personal in some regard, in which case maybe we have to grow as an individual. But the majority of time, failure is not personal. At least at least a significant amount of it is not personal to where I need to debate the fact that it's not personable. Again, it might not be an all statement or a every single time, admittedly. But like before COVID, when people would go into the dating world, if you got rejected, right, in any scenario, it wasn't necessarily personal. People have different standards. People like different humans for different reasons. Sometimes those qualities we like in people, emotional, physical, spiritual, whatever it is, there's no explanation for it. It's somewhere within that almost is sometimes beyond explanation. If you failed at a certain job because there was a point where you didn't care enough about it to really push yourself on it, or the market failed, something you could not control, if you were a salesperson, for example, that one can be really difficult because it secures your basic necessities. And yet if that person, again, decides to let that failure destroy them, they're destroyed. There's definitely a fair amount of people who argue that, again, one person has more at stake than another. I want to acknowledge that because I think that, again, human lives are different to varying degrees. And that's one of the challenges, is that it's not a one size fits all. There's not one size of t-shirt at the store to buy. But these small skills that you can look at, one I've mentioned before about pursuing art and not being afraid to fail at it, and learning how to draw, learning how to sculpt, learning how to play a musical instrument. They require you to understand how you learn and how you grow. And again, like the emotional thing about triggers, what things make you upset and why, and having the courage to ask why. That's another hard one, especially if it's tied to some serious life experience. And yet, Viktor Frankl, from the psychologist who wrote "Man's Search for Meaning," I believe is the title. He was in a Auschwitz concentration camp, and he said at one point he said the research shows that to overcome a fear, you have to have small exposures to it. Obviously, that doesn't apply to every scenario. I think when you start to realize that small skills are within your control, there's a power attached with that. If you want to list something in the chat that you think that a realization you had about any skill that can really be beneficial, that'd be cool. But I think I've made my point. Let this be working for you. Because when it does, it's beautiful, as are you. Be well.